So in your notes packet, I don't know why it's stapled these two flip-flopped. So this is day 4. And it's actually before the triangles, the Pythagorean theorem day. Does everyone have this in your notes?
The thing that says isolate the radical on one side?
Yes. All right. Here's example 1. So in your notes, it says how we're going to do these. It says step 1 is to isolate the radical. You guys know the radical is the square root, so get that part by itself. Square both sides, solve, and check your work. Okay? Squaring both sides is one of those things where sometimes it introduces solutions that just don't work. So we got to make sure we check ourselves on all of these problems. Okay? So step 1 is to get the radical isolated. Is the radical isolated? Yes, so you can just square both sides of the equation. Now, squaring a square root, those undo each other. They're inverse operations. So we're left with just the 2m on the left, and then on the right, 4 squared is 16. Then what? Divide both sides by 2. We get that m equals 8. Now, if you plug 8 into the radical right here, what's 2 times 8? And what's the square root of 16? It is 4, so this checks out. Okay? What are your questions? All right. Have we isolated the radical? Yes. Now we need to square both sides. Holy moly, 120 squared. 14,400. All right, and the x is being multiplied by 3 halves. How do we undo that?
Multiply by
2 2/3, right? You just multiply by the reciprocal. Hold on. They did it differently. They did what Josh was saying. Multiply by the 2 and then divide by the 3. You should get the same thing. Okay, so normally here, I would have just multiplied by 2/3. That's what they did. They multiplied by 2, and then in the next step, divided by 3. Same thing. Double check it if you don't believe me. You don't trust it? All right, I'm going to grab a calculator real quick and check my work, especially because you are questioning whether I'm doing this properly. Okay, so 3 times 9,600, divide that by 2, and then take the square root, and it is 120. So this one does work out. Questions? It is right. I know. All right. Number 3. All right, what should I do first? Add 6 to both sides. Then what? Square both sides. Boom, boom. What do I have on the left? 5x equals 100. Good. Divide both sides by 5, and x equals 20.
Why didn't we do this lesson first? That's it. I'm wondering why.
Okay, so I'm going to do 5 times 20. I'm going to take the square root of that. I'm going to subtract 6, and it does work out. You get 4, okay? Checking does not take a long time, but it's super important to do because you can catch yourself making lots of mistakes. Questions? All right. Now, subtract what were you trying to do? Oh, like the -3 and the +6? Yeah, you can't combine those because, yeah, one's in a radical, one's not. What we want to do is get rid of the parts that aren't within the radical. -6 from both sides. Square both sides. Good. So we have 4m minus 3, and that equals 16. Then, yep, you're right. Add 3 to both sides. What is 16 plus 3? 19. Divide by 4. 19 over 4. You can't do anything with that. Don't make it a mixed number. Don't make it a decimal. Just leave it. OMX, you know, it's the same. Oh, it's not. A variable is a variable. Here. Now that's worse.
It didn't even look like a letter.
It's an M.
It looks scribbled out.
Oh, whatever. All right, questions? Just trying to.
Just say variable equals 19.
Yes, variable unknown value equals 19 over 4.
That's a lot.
Oh my. Here we go.
That one has an X. Yeah, that one has an X squared.
Yeah. So, radical on both sides. Yikes. But we can just square both sides. All right. So, the left side, when you square it, what do you get? 3x. Now, here is where like I said, I didn't grade the quiz from Friday yet, just with being gone and such. But the quiz before that, you guys are struggling with squaring something like this. You have to square the number in the front as well. So 2 squared is where the 4 came from. And then the radical and the squared undo each other, and you're left with just regular 15. Everybody understand this step? Mm-hmm. Okay, now you can actually multiply the 4 and the 15. You get 60. And then x is going to equal 20. Now this one is a little harder to check. If you put the 20 in, you'd have square root 60. You could do a factor tree and see if it simplifies to 4 square root 15. Or you could type them both into your calculator and compare the decimal approximation of the radical. That would work too. So that would look like this. I'd do square root 60. It's giving me 7.745966692. And then I'd also type in 2 times 15 square root. And I get the same weird long decimal. So it works. There were 3 6s in a row. I didn't like it. All right, questions? Here we go. Oh man, it's getting good.
That's the difference in 2 squares.
It is not. Almost. But we're not to that step yet. Wait for it. What should I do to both sides? Square it. So I am going to undo the radical on the left, and on the right I'm just squaring the m. All right. Then what?
Divide by m.
Add m squared to 2. Subtract 2m squared from subtract m squared from 2m squared.
Yeah, anytime you see m squareds, try to get those together, and then you can either factor or you can get everything away from the m squared and take the square root. So I'm going to first get it equal to 0. I'm going to get the m squareds together. Then sort of see what happens. The easiest way to do it is to now get the 25 to the other side and take the square root. But don't forget, if you take the square root of both sides, what do you need in your answer? A plus or minus.
So m equals plus minus 5.
M equals plus minus 5. Now this is where plugging these numbers back in and making sure they work is super important, because you're not only checking your own work, you're checking to see if the solutions are actually solutions. I subtracted m squared from both sides. 2 minus 1 is 1. All right, so when I plug in positive 5, what is 5 squared? 25. And what is 25 times 2? And what's 50 minus 25? And what's the square root of 25? 5. And I have a 5 over here, so I have 5 equals 5. Is that right? What? Yes. Okay, so when I plug in negative 5, what's negative 5 squared? Still 25. What's 25 times 2? 50. What's 50 minus 25? And what's the square root of 25? 5. But what do I have on this side if I plugged in a negative 5? Does 5 equal negative 5?
Yeah, no.
It does not. So one of these is actually not a solution.
Wow.
Did you all catch that?
No.
When I plugged it back in, this one worked, this one did not. This is called an extraneous solution. Sometimes when you do crazy things, like square both sides, and then you get 2 solutions, a lot of times one of those 2 doesn't actually work. It just sort of introduces an error in the math, not by anyone's fault, it just happens, that doesn't actually work.
Is it always going to be the negative number?
It's not always the negative number, no. All right, any questions?
Why is math so difficult?
It's not, it's fun.
You're going to need it for the rest of your life when doing taxes and finance.
All right, number A. That's right, number A. Now we're going to write some equations to model this situation. We're going to find the number. 1/4 the square root of a number is 7.
So we do 7 times 4 and then times it by 2?
Equals 7. Okay, so square
We're going to write an equation. So 1/4,
Square root 1/4 x.
hold on. 1/4 the square root of a number.
Square root 1/4 x.
The 1/4 has to be outside of the square root. We want 1/4 times the square root of an unknown number. So first I'm going to let x equal that number. Then I'm just writing those words as a math equation. I've told you this before. Find the is. That's sort of the breaking spot. Okay, this is where the equal sign goes. Is 7, so equals 7. And then focus on the rest of this. 1/4 the square root. So 1/4 the square root of the number. Okay?
Is that just
You have to get the radical by itself before you can square both sides. So what should I do? Multiply by the reciprocal of 1/4, which is 4/1, which is just 4. So I have square root x equals 28, because 7 times 4 is 28. Then you square both sides.
x equals 7.
784 is correct.
Wow.
And then if you want to double check that, you would do 1 ABC4 times radical 784 equals, and you're going to get 7. And that's a lot of work. Any questions? Part B. When 8 is subtracted from 9 times a number, the square root of the result is 19.
Square root of 9m minus 8.
Or that would be
9x minus
square root
8.
9x minus 8.
Hold on. Let's just read it again. When 8 is subtracted from 9 times a number, the square root of the result is 19.
So 9x minus 8 is square root 19.
No, the square root 9x minus 8 equals 19.
So the square root of 9x minus 8 equals 19. I agree. So just break it up piece by piece. 8 is subtracted. So I know I'm going to have a minus 8.
How did the square root go from
9 times a number. The square root of the result. So you want to do that whole process, then take the square root. 9x minus 8, then take the square root. Is your breaking point, is 19, so equals 19. Yep. To solve this, now we're going to square both sides.
Wow.
19 times 19.
197. I took a guess.
361.
Oh, I was wrong.
All right, so we have 9x minus 8 equals 361. 361 plus 8. 369. Divide by 9. 41.
Now I don't believe in magic. That was magic.
I mean, that was something else. Any questions? All right, here's part C. When 5 is subtracted from the square root of twice a number, the result is 9. I always go right for that. Equals 9. I know that's going to be on the end. 5 is subtracted from the square root. So is 5 in the square root or not?
No.
It's not. So in the back, I'm going to have a minus 5. So I'm kind of working forward. From the very back, I have 9. Right to the left of that is my equal sign. Right to the left of that is my 5. Right to the left of that is my minus. What's in the front?
I know.
Yes.
Square root 2x minus 5 equals 9.
Okay, yep. We're going to let x equal the number, the square root of 2x, and then that's kind of where I left off. The minus 5 equals 9. So even nowadays, after doing this for years and years, I don't always start at the beginning and write it straight. I kind of pick up the pieces and put them where I know, and then fill in the gaps. All right, what should I do?
Add 5.
Add 5 to both sides.
Square both sides.
Square both sides.
2x equals 196.
Good.
Divide by 2.
Divide both sides by 2.
X equals 98.
Good. What are your questions?
Why didn't we do this earlier?
The square root of 1/4 a number is 3. I'm going to call x the number, so let x equal the number. Square root
Square root 1/4 x.
1/4 x equals 3.
Square both sides.
I'm going to square both sides.
1/4 x equals 9. Multiply by 4.
X equals 36. How you guys doing with this?
Awesome. Except for word problems.
They're not that hard.
Maybe for you.
Hey, cuz we done.
Oh, snap, we are?
We are. What do we learn about today?
Thanks,
Radical equations.
Radical equations. Good.
For short, R. arch.
All right, any questions?